my friends. Okay, we're continuing with 1 Samuel chapter 17 and what's happening between David and Goliath. Before I do that, I'd like to let you guys know that there's a lot of Christian stations, at least 20 or more, that are being visited by men in black coats. From the NSA, from the Secret Service, and they are threatening, okay? And they have actually, Paul Bagley, if you check his channel out, I don't watch him too much. I think he's too much of a fearmonger. He's a Christian. He's a minister. I just don't. I'm more of a person that believes in the Lord and having faith in God and knowing that He's going to take care of things. So anyway, a man came to visit him. And he told him, we don't like what you're saying about, President Obama. Have you ever been to the White House, and that sort of thing. So he told him there was 9 different ways he could, be injured or hurt. And sure enough, a little bit later on, he had a unexplained car accident. Guy just went across, the red light and passed 3 cars and T-boned his car so hard that his tire came off. And so he gets together with this guy. The guy calls him, a week later or something like that, and says he wants to talk to him again. He goes, well, that's 1 off the list of the 9. And he said he was a Christian, this guy that came to see him from the NSA. So I don't know what Christian, how you could be a Christian and work for that kind of department of government if you're, and the thing that Paul was talking about that the NSA didn't want people to know about were walls that can be put up in cities that can block people in to cities and not let them out. And buildings that they can easily take a helicopter, drop them in the wall, and then people can't leave. They didn't want people to know that they could do that. Or if you talk about too much about CERN and what's going on with CERN and how they're trying to get into other dimensions. Oh, they don't want you to talk about that too much. So the problem is that, we work for God, okay? And God tells us what's going on because we pray to the Lord, and the Lord reveals things to each and every one of us differently, not always the same. And He has, different purposes for us because we are His arms and legs and voice here on earth. And He speaks through us. And sometimes He appears Himself or sends angels or whatever He needs to do. He's God, okay? He can do whatever He needs. And so for the government not to know this, and especially if you're a Christian, wake up, okay? The Lord is large and in charge, and He knows what you're doing. You can't hide, okay? You can't hide in the mountains. You can't hide under the Antarctic. You can't hide. He knows where you are, for He made the world, okay? So, who are you to question where He's laid the foundation of the pillars, okay? You don't know. So He knows everything you're doing. You can't hide, for He is the light. All right, so that's that. That's what I wanted to say. All right, now on verse 43, chapter 17. So here's Goliath. He's laughing at this little kid. He's a little ruddy kid, okay, and very fair. And he's thinking, who's this little pissant coming against me? And the Philistine said unto David, am I a dog that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods, okay? And the Philistine said unto David, come to me, and I will give thee flesh to the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. And then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword and a spear and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of the hosts, God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled and defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into my hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee, and I will give the carcass of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and go to the wild beasts of the earth, and all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all of this assembly shall know the Lord saveth not with sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you unto our hands. And it came to pass that when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran towards the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took hence a stone, and slung it, and smote the Philistine in the forehead, that the stone sunk in his forehead, and he fell upon the face of the earth. And so David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And then the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. The men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted, and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sha'araim, and even unto Gath and to Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? And Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. And the king said, Inquire, though, whose son the stripling is. And David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, and Abner took him and brought him before Saul with the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son art thou, thou young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse, the Bethlehemite. So, chapter 18, Jonathan loves David. Saul entices his praise, seeks to kill him in his fury. He offers him his daughter for a snare. And it came to pass that when he made an end of speaking unto Saul, that the soul of Jonathan was knitted with the soul of David, and Jonathan loved him as his own soul. Now, many LGBT people, including myself, believe that they did love each other as a man and woman, that David said of Jonathan that, well, I'll just keep reading, but I believe that they really, truly, truly loved each other deeply, like soulmates, okay? And Saul took him that day and would let him go no more home to his father's house. And Jonathan and David made a covenant because he loved him as his own soul. Some ministers say, well, it was a brotherly love. No, it was more than that, okay? He truly, truly loved him. And Jonathan stripped himself of the robe and was upon him and gave it to David. Okay, Jonathan stripped himself of the robe that was upon him and gave it to David, and his garments, even his sword and his bow and his girdle. And David went out whatsoever Saul sent him, behaved himself wisely, and Saul sent him over the men of the war. And he was accepted in the sight of all the people, and also in the sight of Saul's servants. And it came to pass, as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, and the women came out of all the cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets and with joy and instruments of music. And the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul has slain his thousands, David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth and was saying, what they were saying displeased him. So he was jealous, okay? I just want to say one more thing about Goliath. Goliath also had two brothers that were giants as well. So I don't know if the Israelites were able to chase them down and kill them. I don't think so, because they're mentioned in another book, okay? Anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, so Saul, he was wroth, he was displeased, he was jealous. They have described unto David 10,000, and to me they have ascribed but thousands. And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day and forward with an evil eye, okay? Jealousy. And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul. He prophesied in the midst of the house, and David played with his hand at the other times, and there was a javelin in Saul's hand. And Saul cast the javelin, for he said, I will smite David, even to the wall with it. And David avoided out of his presence twice. So he's able to avoid him 2 times. Saul was afraid of David because the Lord was with him and was departed from Saul. And therefore Saul removed him from him and made him his captain over 1,000, and he went out and came before the people. David behaved himself wisely in all his ways, and the Lord was with him. Wherefore when Saul saw that he behaved himself very wisely, he was afraid of him. But all Israel and Judah loved David because he went out and came in before them. So he was just himself. And Saul said unto David, Behold my elder daughter Merab, her I will give thee to wife. Only be thou valiant for me, and fight the Lord's battles. For Saul said, Let not mine hand be upon him, but let the hand of the Philistines be upon him. And David said unto Saul, Who am I, and what is my life, or my father's family in Israel, that I should be the son-in-law to the king? But it came to pass at the time of Merab, Saul's daughter, should have been given to David, that she was given unto Adriel, the Meholite, to wife. And Michal, Saul's daughter, loved David, and they told Saul, and the thing pleased him. And Saul said, I'll give him her, that she may be a snare to him, and the hand of the Philistines may be against him. Wherefore Saul said to David, Thou shalt this day be my son-in-law in the one of the twain. And Saul commanded his servants, saying, Commune with David secretly, and say, Behold, the king hath delight in thee, and his servants love thee. Now therefore be the king's son-in-law. And Saul's servants spoken to those words in the ears of David. And David said, It seemeth to me you're a light thing to be a king's son-in-law, seeing that I am a poor man and lightly esteemed. And the servants of Saul told him, saying, On this manner spoke David. And Saul said, Thus shall you say to David, The king desires not any dowry, but 100 foreskins of the Philistines, to be avenged of the king's enemies. But Saul thought to make David fall by the hand of the Philistine. That when his servants told David these words, it pleased David well to be the king's son-in-law, and the days were not expired. Therefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins and gave them in a full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal his daughter to wife. Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And Saul was yet more afraid